Hello and welcome to Eastern Horizon. And today I have joined by a very senior and a very high-profile expert from Finland, Professor Markku Kivinen. He is the Professor Emeritus, Aleksanteri Institute, Finnish Centre for Russian and European Studies. Thank you very much, Professor Markku.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
I really appreciate your time, especially when I think that Russia-Ukraine is becoming an international headline. So, my first question is this: Mandy, that Russia-Ukraine is heading towards a peace deal, and the latest statements that comes from Vladimir Putin that quote unquote that Russia is ready if Europe wants war. So, I mean, how you assess this statement?
I think he, as a great power leader, he wants to show that the most fundamental instrument that they have is the nuclear armament and the risk of a nuclear war. That's his basic point which he's making. And his understanding is that he has to remind the European leaders that this is the case, that's the, in a way, the spirit of the game that is going on at the moment. The most fundamental thing in this play.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean that when we talk about the Russia and Ukraine peace deal, and you have been observing the Russia and the Eastern European studies and the affairs. So where you see that Nordic countries, at which point, that when it comes to the overall Russia-Ukraine conflicts, how you see that the Nordic countries stance on this?
The Nordic countries, after the new membership of NATO, Finland and Sweden, they are one of the key participants in that sense that they are close to Russia, and they really feel threatened by this attack against Ukraine, especially Finland, with our own history being that that we have had these wars with Russia. So we are close. We are very aware of the war, much more aware than many other countries.
Finland has been increasing its defense budget for the last couple of years. If we see the trends, what is the reason behind this, and what could be the concern that Helensky may have?
I think the problematic is multi-layered in a way. We have several layers in this conflict and many layers in this war as well. To some extent, it's a war between great powers, and that's why United States comes in. On the other hand, it's also an internal conflict within Ukraine. And of course, it's also a conflict between Russia and Ukraine. So there are many layers which had to be taken into account. But the most fundamental process which is now going on is, first of all, the war. And then the second process, which is now on the agenda, is this peace negotiation process by Mr. Trump. And if we look at the actual front line, you can see that the front line is dynamic in a small scale, not in a very large scale. It's very much controlled by both sides, and kind of a stalemate is still there. On the other hand, there is the recognition of the great power status of Russia by Mr. Trump. And that's why I would argue that that there are some key elements of some kind of a peace agreement are present in this moment. Stalemate in the front line, on the other hand, and then great power recognition of Russia, on the other hand. The great power recognition has practical dimensions concerning economy and concerning Russia's position in the great power balance or competition between China and United States. And what Trump wants to do is to at least to some extent, get Russia out of the sphere of influence of China. And
So,
this is a basic logic which, to a large extent, defines the other elements. But then Ukraine, as an independent player, is in a very complicated situation because they should, in order to get rid of the war, they should give up some of their own region, which Russia has conquered. And this is not easy. We know it from our own experience. This is hard. This is hard for the people. This is hard for the soldiers who have been there for years now. So there is war fatigue in Ukraine on the other hand, but there is also determination to keep on their own intentions of the war. So it is a complicated process, and to my mind, the European participation in this process is in a way quite contradictory and limited in very complex ways, because it seems to be that the European Union and the Western European powers in general, they are not prepared for peace or war. And that makes it very complicated. If there were a major war for several years to come, they have to make huge military investments. They are preparing for that, but they are not at place at the moment. It will take a few years, and it's very hard to see that whether Ukraine can stand for these years. They are anyway losing lots of people all the time. So this is actually the where we stand at the moment. That the Europe is it's very unclear whether these security guarantees provided by the Europe without the United States would in fact be. And there is also discussion about triggering or something which would be similar to NATO fifth paragraph, which is not at place. If it were, the European countries were already fighting, but they are not fighting. So the European role is highly contradictory in this complex conflict.
Indeed. So, I mean that let's suppose, or I mean that how much you think that this peace deal is practical and pragmatic, and let's suppose if there is any breakthrough, what is the future of that breakthrough, and how long it will last, and what will be the future of the Russia and the Europe relations?
I think my own understanding is that this great power constellation is the most important one, but at what point it will be really implemented as a peace plan is still an open issue. I think that both sides still, to some extent, they believe that some kind of a Clausewitzian understanding of the war is still possible for them. And there is not an inevitable process of peacemaking for either side of the conflict. And so there's lots of consideration which will take a long time. But still my own prediction is that in the long run, the real this Ukraine conflict is for the US and as well as for Russia, it is something that they want to get rid of. And Russia is now given a lot of recognition by Trump, not only by negotiating with Russia, but also negotiating with several economic issues, which definitely are important from US point of view. There's lots of underestimation of Russian economic significance in the West, but if you look at the purchasing power, Russia is the fourth biggest country in terms of economy in the world. It's not comparable to China, India, or United States, but after them, it is still the next. And so it's not a minor player. It's bigger than Japan or Germany, or France, or Britain.
Yeah. So mean that so when we discuss the US, so mean how you analyze Donald Trump approach, especially towards Ukraine-Russia conflicts, and then his approach toward Europe. That which mind that he is using in this conflict, and what is his strategy, especially in this conflict?
I think Trump is in a way changing the US foreign policy in some very fundamental senses. First of all, he's giving up the idea that the United States should play a role as some kind of key military player in the world. He wants to change from the military affairs towards business. And he understands business in terms of sphere of influence game. And the sphere of influence game in business sense means that it's not a zero-sum game. You can play with China, you can play with India, you can play with even with Russia, but you always play with your former allies, the European countries, and also with Ukraine. He sees everything from the point of view of the long-term economic interest as he understands them. And he wants to bring back some of the industrial bases of the US, in a way returning back from globalization in that sense, and creating and also weakening the dollar, not getting rid of the dominating role of the dollar, but weakening the value of the dollar and raising the level of the competition capacity of the United States in those ways. And this, to some extent, this also responds to the interest of Russia in many ways, because Russia is now very dependent on China. And even if they had some special context with countries which have traditionally been having contradicting interests with China, like Japan, Vietnam, India, but definitely Putin would benefit, and Russia would benefit from the possibility to have a more constructive relationship with both United States and China, and it would be also more prominent international player in that game. In that case, it doesn't mean that this approachment of China and Russia, that it will wither away completely, but it means that there is some kind of a more balanced approach possible from Russia. And that's kind of how I see that this Trump world would look like. That it is, and of course, these agreements are made then by the role of the great powers, and it also means for small powers and the European Union, that they would be more or less in the margins of this kind of a development if this comes the dominating policy in the United States in the forthcoming years or even decades.
So my last question, that how you see, mean that the Europe in this conflict, mean that the Europeans members states are all on war page, or they have also mean that difference of opinion, and mean that they are also on the same page on this Ukraine issue.
To some extent, they are, at least in the rhetorics, they are. But as we know, there are significant exceptions. Turkey has its own policy. Hungary, Slovakia have their own policies. If we look more closely at the policy of France, they have a completely different kind of a foreign policy history than for example, Britain. And so it is the diversification of the foreign policy histories of European countries concerning Russia is important. In the conditions of war, there is a tendency to be more coherent, but they don't manage to do this in real political terms. And so they are not prepared in those terms. They have been so used to deal with smaller issues and smaller games and regulating their own rules. Even in terms of the economy, they are kind of losing their position on the world scale, where in artificial intelligence, the real game is between China and United States. And it's not evident that the United States will be the winning side in this. But whether it is a zero-sum game is also a doubtful thing to think of.
Thank you very much, Professor Markku Kivinen. I really appreciate your insight. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.